Good evening, and I would like to echo the manager's comments. I regret that we're here tonight under questions of why staff is rushing this project through. I'll be honest, we didn't anticipate being here. It was always our intent to purchase the credits. That was our hope, that was our desire, that was our plan. But the credits that we were told would materialize did not materialize. This was a project, this was our contingency plan for how to get the credits, and we are down to our contingency. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've learned in terms of questions from the community and some of the things that I think maybe will help in terms of questions that council and some citizens may have. I have put some slides together. It doesn't necessarily flow, but there are some things that I think bear being stated and repeated. This is the existing site. It's outlined in red. It's shown in 2002 and then today in 2024. Most of the people that are talking are familiar with it in 2024, where it is inhabited by a large part loblolly pine. There are some other varieties of trees, but loblolly pine is the predominant tree. But if you look at the site in 2002, and as Mr. Solanic pointed out with his box of exhibits, this is a fill site. This is a site that was created by material that was dredged and deposited on this location. The local community used it as a dump for a number of years. It is not what we would consider to be a maritime forest from its conception. This was originally a wetland, and it is proposed to be restored as a wetland. A little bit about plan history. This is coming to you in a short amount of time, but this is not a rushed project by any means. This project has been on the books for over a decade. This is a project that we engaged with the local community, environmental organizations, regulatory community, state, federal, and local entities for a period of over 4 years to determine how we could best protect the Pleasure House Point community. When the city purchased that land, it was important to them to work on a plan that would protect it and would make best use of that land. Over the course of 4 years, the master plan that I'm going to refer to here for the next couple of slides was prepared. That plan was, again, as I mentioned, it was put together by stakeholders from many different environmental groups, state, federal, local regulatory agencies, as well as the community involved and other entities, stakeholders that were local to the project. I moved this slide up so that council can see. If you look to the left or to the west on this, you'll see that there's a developed maritime forest. This is the plan that group put together over the 4-year plan to develop a maritime forest. Between the maritime forest and the proposed wetland restoration, there's a successional maritime forest. To the south of that, a salt marsh, the CBF facility, which has been put in place, and the successional salt meadow. But there was a spot in the middle that was protected so that it could be restored as a wetland. And what this did was put together the many different aspects that are necessary for a variety and diversity that would be necessary to make the best use of this piece of property. However, in the ensuing years, the wetland restoration project didn't occur. And so what we see is as a result, we have the tree development that has occurred. But that doesn't mean that nothing happened in the ensuing years. Since the plan was put together, a conservation easement was put forward by council and was adopted and does protect the other areas of the Pleasure House Point area. It protects the maritime forest, the successional marsh, the successional salt marsh, and the successional salt meadows. But what was not done was the restoration of the wetland. This conservation easement, as you can see, had a cutout, and the area that's in yellow is the area that we're talking about today. This area was the area that was proposed and adopted to be the restoration area. In the master plan from 2014, you can see that there's language in there that talks about a city's mitigation bank. I highlighted the text so that it was clear. This was always proposed to be in the project. Following that, City Council adopted a CIP to allow staff to work on the preparation of that mitigation bank. And for 4 years, city staff did exactly that. They moved the ball as City Council had proposed and directed us to do through the CIP. I don't know why that changed, I apologize. The CIP to establish the bank was originally proposed. We thought we would be using those credits for an SSD program. As I have stated before, this bank is very limited in terms of what we can use it for. We cannot use it for private development. We cannot use it for economic development. We cannot use it for very many things. We can only use it for municipal projects. Even the SSD, while the city is a partner in the SSD, it doesn't solely exist as a municipal project, and therefore, we weren't able to use it for that. The fact that we weren't able to use it for the SSD and the fact that there were other competing interests, council did not move forward in 2018 of creating the restored marsh. So, did it die? It did not. We still managed to move forward, get the banking instrument created, but we just didn't move after that because we knew at some point this would probably be a city council priority again. The credits were made available, the document was created, the banking instrument was developed and created, and the design plans were progressed through 90%. Now, we did as much as we could do before we were ready to move forward. And at that point, we just didn't move forward anymore. We knew that at some point this would become a priority, as I mentioned, but we didn't know when or how long that would take. For the FPP program in 21, when the bond referendum passed, we knew that we would need credits. It was always our expectation that when those projects came due, we would purchase those credits through private banks to the degree that we were able to do so. So why now? Why the rush? The rush, quite frankly, is as a result of the fact that we worked with the private banks and we said, are you going to develop? Yes, we're going to develop. So this was our contingency plan, but it was never our primary plan. This was not what we anticipated doing. We anticipated buying the credits. But we knew there were no credits that were available, so working with the private institutions, they kept telling us, we're going to develop, we're going to develop, we're going to develop. But they didn't move. And now we find ourselves here at the point when we waited as long as we could wait. And unless we make the choice, the difficult choice to move forward on the restoration project now, we will not be able to create enough credits. I'm going to talk a little bit about credits here in just a second, but it has been mentioned that we need 2.7 acres of tidal wetland credits. 2.7 acres will get us to the first part of the project. This is the first two projects that are in the Windsor Woods area. So we have 0.4 acres for the Windsor Woods pump station and 2.3 acres for the London Bridge Creek and South London Bridge Creek projects. These are estimates. The designs are not complete. These projects are being built as design-build projects. What that means is we've engaged a firm to work with us. They're working through the design. When they get to the completion of the design and everything is all done, we will then be able to submit that to the Corps of Engineers and ask them for a permit. But I can't submit it and I can't ask for a permit today because I can't give them the actual outlines and the actual details. If we get to that place when we submit that and the Corps of Engineers says, what do you have to offset the impacts that you're going to have to the wetlands? And we tell them, we don't have any credits in our area. They're going to say, what is your proposal? And if we say we're going to try and buy those credits from somewhere else, and I know New Mill has been mentioned a couple of times, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a moment. New Mill is not in the Lynn Haven Basin. So if we get to that place when we have to submit the packet, the Corps of Engineers has every right to say, no. We would have to request a waiver from them to deviate from what their official policy is. Now, they make those waivers, but typically it's for very small amounts of wetlands, not 3 acres, 2.7 acres. That's a very unusual thing. And so we have every reason to be concerned with the ability to get a waiver to use a wetland bank that's outside of the Lynn Haven credit, or the Lynn Haven HUC. So I want to talk a little bit about credits. I'm going to be the first one to say I am not a wetlands expert. So my definitions that I threw up on the slide here are a layman's way for me to communicate my understanding of wetland credit, these different types of wetland credits, with other laymen. There are experts here that are going to throw stones at me and say, you said it wrong. And they're going to be right. I said it wrong. But I'm close, I promise. It's important to note that there are different types of wetland credits. Upland wetland credits. These are usually pockets of wetlands that are not associated with a moving body of water. So think about your house. Unless you live on a creek, if you live inland or away from a moving body of water, you can have a low spot where water will collect, reeds might grow up, and you can have an upland body of wetland that exists. And if you impact that, that's an upland impact. Then there are riverine, typically freshwater wetland impacts. These are all adjacent to freshwater rivers. Then we have tidal wetlands. And this is the type of wetland that we specifically are working to create right now. And then there's subaqueous, those that are below water. Now, again, we're working specifically to create a saltwater tidal wetland bank. And the reason that that's important is the projects that we're going to do in Windsor Woods exist on Thalia Creek and along Lynn Haven. Those are tidal bodies of water. We have to replace like for like. If we were doing a different project and it was upland, then we could have more latitude in the types of wetland credits we might be able to use. We might be able to buy wetland credits that were not inside of our hydraulic unit code, but we are not able to do so. And so I keep using this term hydraulic unit code. A little bit about hydraulic unit codes. If you think about a large parking lot and somebody dumps water in a large parking lot and it runs to a drain, it's going to run to the drain that it's graded towards. But if they go to another spot in that large parking lot and they dump that water, it's going to run to another drain. Our environment functions much like that in terms of our hydraulic unit codes. The water that we're talking about the wetland credits have to be tied to the hydraulic unit code that is tied to the Lynn Haven Basin. And if you can see it here, it's highlighted in green. The New Mill bank is not in our hydraulic unit code. It is tied to the Elizabeth River. This is what gives the Corps of Engineers the ability to say, no. If we have a bank, it's our bank, and it's in our hydraulic unit code, it meets the criteria. If we try to buy credits from another bank outside of our hydraulic unit code, we cannot control that, and we lose any ability to have any real say. This is really important because that's going to affect whether or not we can move forward with our permit. I mentioned that there's different types of wetlands, and I mentioned that there's different types of HUCs. This site, the Ribbit site, tells us whether or not credits are available. If you go to this site, if anybody wants to go to the Ribbit site, it's incredibly difficult to search. It is government efficiency at its finest. It's federal government efficiency at its finest. It's incredibly difficult to navigate. But what I will tell you is I promise you, you will find 0 tidal wetland credits that are available inside our hydraulic unit code. That's the rub. And the fact that we kept hoping against hope that we would get those credits, that they would come in on the private side, is where we were going until we got to the point where we couldn't make that decision. We couldn't wait for that decision any longer. The goals and objectives of this project are to restore and create 6.22 acres of tidal vegetated wetlands and 1.78 acres of non-tidal or non-vegetated tidal wetlands. We need that so that we can be able to move forward on our project. And I want to talk a little bit about the timeline and why we're rushing. We will create in total 8 acres of wetland credits. The way that the banking system works is after we create the bank and we issue a notice to proceed for construction, we will get 15% of the total credits that we get. 15% of 8 acres is 1.2 acres. So 1.2 acres once we issue the notice to proceed for the contractor to go to work. We get to 25%, an additional 10% come available after the project is completed. We believe that we can have that project completed by October of this year. That's why we're rushing. But the real thing is, it's worth noting, is that we will only have 2 acres. If you remember, we need 2.7 acres to be able to permit. So 2 acres is not enough. If we wait until next year, we won't be able to get the full 50% or 4 acres until we've had 1 year of monitoring. 1 year of monitoring means that if we start the construction this year in February, complete construction in October, have 1 year of monitoring, that means we can go to construction next year in October of 2026. If, on the other hand, we delay and we can't get this project completed, we will lose a year. That means we lose a year on our FPP project. We lose a year in terms of cost of the FPP project. We lose another year in terms of cost for doing this project. And unless somebody comes along and develops a bank in the interim, we wind up at the exact same spot we were. I apologize for the spot that Public Works has put council in having to make this decision. I know it's a hard decision, and I know that there are people that are sitting behind me that are very upset with this decision. But I promise you, there's no ulterior motive here. We take no pleasure in letting people down, but we also know that we have to move the FPP projects forward. This was our contingency plan. We do not brief council on every contingency. I promise you, we have tons and tons of contingency plans, and you do not want me to bring them all forward, as it would just raise lots and lots of questions about things that will never happen. But we did blow it on this one, and I apologize for that. Having said that, this is our current schedule. We hope to be complete with this project in October of this year, with 1 year of monitoring under our belt so that we can go to construction in October of 2026, and I stand ready to answer any questions that council may have.